30 seconds, everyone. Council, are you paying attention? Prove my point.
Got to start paying attention. I was just worried about quorum.
Thank you, everyone. I would love to call this meeting to order. My name is Blake Dye, and I am serving as chair for this meeting.
Hello.
Is that someone online? All right, thank you. So again, my name is Blake Dye, serving as chair for this meeting in the absence of our elected chair. And I want to thank everyone for being here. I'd like to call this meeting to order and have a roll call.
Commissioner Fry.
Commissioner Fry, are you able to hear? I don't think he can hear.
We will go back to him. Commissioner Havner.
Those in the meeting, if you can hear me, can you please raise your hands virtually? They can't hear.
Can someone hear me? I can't hear anyone.
Those in the meeting, if you can hear me, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'd like to start over. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Blake Dye, and I am vice chair of the Washington County Planning Commission, and I am serving as chair today in the absence of our elected chair. Chair Lockwood was unable to be with us today. I'd like to start off this meeting with a roll call.
Commissioner Fry.
Present.
Commissioner Havner.
Present.
He did note that he was going to be absent.
Present.
Commissioner Maury Bidu is absent today. Commissioner Will.
Present.
Present.
Looks like we have 6 in attendance today. Planning commissioners.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for being here. I'd just like to point out that we are running this as a hybrid meeting, so I would like to ask for your grace as we may have some technical difficulties. If for any reason people that are participating remotely are not able to hear, could you just please indicate by letting us know that you are unable to hear what we are seeing. So I would like to move on to the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Dye. My name is Erin Wardell, and I am the Planning and Development Services Manager here at Washington County. I have a somewhat lengthy director's report today. We have a couple of things to share with you. First, great announcement. We've recently hired a new senior planner in transportation planning and a new associate planner in community planning. So CJ Doxey is our new senior planner, and Tricia Guarisco, I think I said that, Guarisco, is our new associate planner. You'll hopefully have an opportunity to meet them soon at future meetings. On October 24th, over 300 community members attended an open house for the county's significant natural resources project. We were overwhelmed with the number of people who showed up for that meeting, and it was really wonderful to see so many people engaged in one of our projects. We have an online open house currently, and that runs through November 10th, so we're looking to see even more participation through that. Also, in public events that have happened recently, Chair Lockwood and PC Liaison Todd Borkowitz participated in a Boards and Commissions open house on October 19th. That was an opportunity to recruit people to serve on various county boards and commissions, and the Planning Commission is, of course, one of those that we're looking to recruit people for. We are anticipating that in January, the board will hold a work session on reappointments or possible new appointments to the Planning Commission. We have 3 commissioners whose terms will expire in January. Those 3 could be reappointed, or the board may choose to consider new applicants as well. So that will take place in January. Another board update. On October 24th, the board held a hearing on A engrossed ordinance number 882, known as a tile flat road extension. The board directed a second engrossment of that ordinance, and so they'll be considering the B engrossment of the ordinance on December 5th and December 12th. We'll bring back an update after those hearings happen. So now for a scheduling conversation, and there's a slide up on the screen right now to help us talk through this. So in looking at our schedule for the next year and the ordinances that we need to bring forward, particularly the Significant Natural Resources Ordinance, which we expect will have a lot of dialogue and a lot of consideration, we are concerned that there are 2 PC hearings in the summer that will need to be canceled or rescheduled due to holidays. The first of those is June 19th, which is scheduled on the Juneteenth holiday, and then July 3rd, which is, of course, the day before the July 4th holiday. So staff is requesting that the Planning Commission take an action today to reschedule 3 of the June and July meetings to accommodate the various holidays that are taking place. So the request to move the meetings by 1 week is displayed up here on these slides. So we're asking to move the June 19th meeting to June 26th, the July 3rd meeting to July 10th, and the July 17th meeting to July 24th. Actually, I think I said we were going to do that today, but we'd actually just like to share this information with you today, and then at your meeting on the 15th, we'll be asking for Planning Commission action to direct staff to move those meetings. All of our other meetings for 2024 should remain the same. Finally, speaking of ordinances and scheduling, we wanted to give you an update on the North Plains Urban Growth Boundary Expansion. As we shared at your last meeting, there was an effort to collect signatures to refer the North Plains City Ordinance to the May ballot. The signature gathering was successful, and enough signatures were verified in order to refer that ordinance. So there will be a May vote on May 14th, 2024, of voters who live within the city of North Plains to decide whether or not they want to support the city's ordinance to expand the urban growth boundary. This makes things a little bit complicated for us as the county. As you may recall, the North Plains ordinance is step 1 in the process of expanding the urban growth boundary. The county's acceptance of that is step 2. With this referral, step 1 has essentially not happened. So it doesn't really make sense for the county to move forward into step 2, and in fact, it creates a lot of potential complications and legal problems if we were to do that. So our staff recommendation at your November 15th meeting will be to continue the deliberations until a date certain after that May vote has taken place, so we know if the voters of North Plains will be upholding the UGB expansion or rejecting it. So we will be having the meeting on November 15th, at which time we had expected the Planning Commission will continue their deliberations. Instead, we'll ask you to immediately continue that to the date that we select in, I believe, July, possibly one of the June dates, though. So this is somewhat related to the conversation about moving those previous meetings, because this is one of the important items that we'll need to find a new date for. I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions on this before we move into other announcements. I see Commissioner Will.
Thank you. I saw the slide with some dates. When we talk about it further, could we just get what day of the week is that?
Oh, they are Wednesdays. So we're just
All of them
continuing by 1 week. Yep, so your typical Wednesday meeting would just be the next Wednesday.
Okay, so it's just a week off. Okay, Thank you.
Exactly.
And before, I'd like to ask a question as well. So we're looking at the May 14th vote, and we'd know pretty soon after that we have significant natural resources as a pretty hefty conversation. And so I'm just curious about how they'll clash.
We're a little bit concerned about that as well. And so we really want to make sure that you're not biting off too much at any particular meeting. And so what we'll probably do is pick the date that we'll plan to continue the North Plains ordinance and then work around that with the significant natural resource hearings.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that, or I'll move on to the rest of the items? Okay. You can always answer questions later. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Commissioner Fry.
Thank you. I guess my question is regarding having deliberation on something that we're not going to even be voting on, and it's going to be deferred for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
If, you know, and might not even, I guess part of the question might be, would it even, if it passes, or if the voters vote against it, however I should phrase that, if they vote against the expansion, will we be taking further action? And I guess part of my question is, I think we have people coming up on terms. I think we'd be deliberating something with with people who might not even be voting potentially, and a lot of changes could take place over 6 months. So I'm just kind of wondering if that's something that we should just wait on.
That's absolutely what we'll be recommending. So the staff recommendation will be to not do deliberations on the 15th. However, you have to have that meeting because we continued the hearing at the last hearing. We continued the deliberations to the 15th. So the Planning Commission needs to convene for that meeting and say, we choose to continue these deliberations, and then hold a vote on that to the date certain in July. But staff agree, we think that it makes the most sense to hold all deliberations until after we know the outcome of that vote, because there may be nothing to deliberate on, or North Plains could choose to change something and come back with a different ordinance locally that we would take action on. So everything's a little bit on hold right now.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. That makes sense.
So with that, I have a couple of announcements on upcoming meetings, and my computer put itself to sleep while we were talking. There we go. So upcoming Board of Commissioners meetings for your general awareness. On November 7th, the board will be hearing their second hearing on ordinance number 897. That is the urban growth boundary expansion for Tigard's River Terrace 2.0 area. Staff will be recommending continuance again to January in order to give us time to respond to community feedback that we heard. On November 28th, the board will have their hearing as advertised for the North Plains urban growth boundary expansion, and similar to what we're recommending for the Planning Commission, staff will be recommending, of course, that the board continue their action until after that May vote has taken place. And then on December 5th, the board will have, as we talked about, their first hearing on the second engrossment of ordinance number 882, the Tile Flat Road extension. So for today's Planning Commission meeting, you'll be having a work session on our minor transportation system plan amendments, and then you will move into a hearing on a quasi-judicial plan amendment. For your next PC meeting, November 15th, your evening meeting, you will have a work session on the significant natural resources project, and then you will have the hearing on ordinance number 899, North Plains urban growth boundary. There is a lot going on, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for that comprehensive report. I'd like to move on to public communication. This is the time on the agenda where we are providing space and voice for people who have things that they would like to share with the Planning Commission. So do we have anyone online that is available for public communication?
Would anyone in attendance in the virtual audience like to communicate to the Planning Commission on non-agenda items? If so, please indicate by raising your virtual hand. Chair Dye, looks like we have no one who has their hands up. Looks like we can, it looks like we have Jeff Brown.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Brown, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I have something regarding Part E, public hearings, but you may not be referring to that. If so, mute me and I'll get back. This is on the Planning Commission meeting agenda. There's Section E is public hearings. I'm not sure what you're referring to now as public comment, or we wait till that that particular agenda starts to be discussed.
Yes, if you have a comment that is not on the agenda, and the public hearing is about a quasi-judicial plan amendment that we're going to be discussing. So if
Okay.
you have something that's not about that, this would be your time to share that.
Okay. I'm not quite sure of the terminology, but this is a development for and a request for a zoning change.
I think that will be discussed in the public hearings section.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry I interrupted.
That's okay.
Chair Dye, it looks like we don't have any other people in the virtual audience.
Okay, and as I scan the audience here, I do not see anyone for public comment as well. So thank you, and we will move on now to the work session. So I think we have Mr. Valentine is going to be joining us for the minor transportation system plan amendments.
Good afternoon, Chair Dye, Commissioners. Deami Valentine, the Principal Transportation Planner with the department. And we just wanted to provide a quick overview on some of the elements that will be included in a minor transportation system plan amendment ordinance that we will be filing shortly and will be coming before you probably after the first of the year. So just quick overview again, just providing some of the specific proposed changes that are going to be included within the ordinance, and happy to answer any questions throughout the presentation. So we have 4 elements in the TSP that we anticipate making some minor adjustments to. First, the proposed changes within the pedestrian element will include amending some trail designations, specific alignments. The big one, the most significant element for Washington County is establishing the preferred Council Creek Trail alignment. There's also the city of Tigard and Hillsborough has made some adjustments to their transportation system plans, so we will be incorporating, for consistency purposes, incorporating their changes to their plans, which will be reflected in the pedestrian element, which includes designating specific trails and as well as showing as built. So our trail alignments now are fairly general, and so we've done some work to really refine those a little bit. And then in the bicycle element changes, we have, again, coming from the city of Hillsborough and Tigard, reflecting some of their proposed bicycle roadway elements, mostly adding enhanced major street bikeways, which is a designation in our plan that identifies where there would be a preference for a more enhanced bicycle facility, generally a buffered bike lane as the minimum standard. And then our transit element changes are really reflective of the work that TriMet has done through their Forward Together concept plan, and which is a 6-year plan to improve transit services throughout the region. And so we will be incorporating mostly route changes as well as service upgrade changes or downgrade, depending on what is currently reflected in our transportation system plan, which is important because this a lot of the climate-friendly and equitable community implementation is dependent on the transit designations for some of the implementation, specifically parking standards. And then we have a number of changes in the roadway element, which includes some roadway classification as well as lane number changes, as well as removing several refinement areas where the specific alignment and or function has been determined or has already been constructed, as in the case of 124th Avenue down in Tualatin. That was a very brief overview of what you will be seeing here in the next couple months once we have a filed ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners online? All right, seeing none, Mr. Valentine, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to digging into some of these topics as soon as you present them.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, so we will now be moving into the quasi-judicial plan amendment, and I would like to have Mr. Rob Brevet start off with the opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Dye. For the record, Rob Bovet, I'm the legal counsel for the Planning Commission here. Today's hearing before the Planning Commission is for an amendment to change the land use designation of a 3.33 acre lot from residential 5 units per acre district, or R5, to residential 25 plus units per acre district, or R25 plus, consistent with the designation of bordering land to the south. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. First, staff will present a summary of the applicable criteria and staff report, including a recommendation. The Planning Commission may ask clarifying questions, and Vice Chair Dye will then open the public hearing. Second, the applicant may provide information by way of testimony, a presentation, or both. There is a 10-minute limit on this part of the hearing. Next, testimony will be taken from persons in favor of the proposal. There is a 5-minute time limit per person, 10 minutes for a Citizens Participation Organization, or CPO. Next, testimony will be taken from persons in opposition to the proposal. There is a 5-minute time limit per person, 10 minutes for a CPO. If there are any parties that wish to testify and who are neutral on the proposal, that testimony will be taken next with the same time limits. Finally, the applicant will have the opportunity to offer rebuttal information or testimony if the applicant so desires. There is a 5-minute time limit on this final part of the hearing. Anyone who wishes to testify on this plan amendment and has not notified staff in advance will need to raise their hand or virtually raise their hand if you are online when staff asks who will testify in favor, who will testify in opposition, and who will testify as neutral. Once each person is given their opportunity to speak, they should state their name and address, after which I will ask them to take an oath or affirmation as to the truthfulness of their testimony. Afterwards, the person can begin their testimony. Persons may also submit written testimony to the clerk for the Planning Commission. It can be emailed to lutplanningcommission@washingtoncounty.gov. The deadline to submit written testimony in this plan amendment is the close of the public hearing unless the Planning Commission agrees to establish a later deadline. Prior to the end of the public hearing, a participant in this hearing may request a continuance to submit additional testimony, evidence, or argument, and request that the record remain open for at least 7 days. Prior to the close of this hearing, Vice Chair Dye will ask Clerk Aguilar if any additional written testimony has been received. After the close of the public hearing, the Planning Commission may deliberate and vote on this plan amendment request. No additional testimony will be received after the public hearing is closed, except as I just described. All testimony, arguments, and evidence should only be directed toward the criteria included in the staff report or other criteria in the plan or land use regulations which the person providing testimony believes to apply to the decision on this plan amendment. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Planning Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude the ability to make an appeal based on that issue. Further, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow Washington County to respond to that issue may preclude their ability to file a lawsuit for damages. At this time, each planning commissioner should disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest, if any. And I will pause now to see if any commissioners have any disclosures to put on the record related to ex parte contacts about this matter, any bias relating to this matter, or any conflicts of interest.
Just for the record, I'd like to disclose, I don't have a conflict of interest, in my opinion, on this matter, but I do know Ken Sandblast at Westlake, who is the planner on the project for the applicant. I've never discussed the project with him, and I have no interest in the project, but just in the interest of full transparency, wanted to put that relationship and connection out there, but I don't have any bias on the project or any conflict of interest.
Thank
Any
you, Mr.
others?
Fry. Are there any other commissioners?
Doesn't appear. That concludes my opening remarks, Chair Dye, and you can now proceed with the summary and staff report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bovet. Ms. Kelly, could you please provide us with our staff report?
Thank you, Chair Dye. Yes, I'm happy to. As Council noted, this is a comprehensive plan amendment proposing to change the land use designation of a property from R5 to R25+. That would mean a change from 4 to 5 units per acre to between 20 and 100 units per acre. As I go through this presentation, I'll first discuss the proposal. We'll look at the site and the vicinity, some key criteria and findings of compliance, and then staff's recommendation. The applicant, as previously noted, is Commons at Sylvan Highlands, LLC, and the representative is Westlake Consultants. So, taking a peek here at the site and its vicinity, there are several land use designations shown on the screen to the left. These were all applied in 1983 with adoption of the Cedar Hills Cedar Mill Community Plan. The site is 3.3 acres. It currently is developed only with a parking lot that serves an apartment development to the south. The property has no street frontage, and it's served only by access through that property to its south. It was approved for a Tibetan Peace Center, church, and school in 2002, but that development was never built. Now, surrounding the site, immediately south, as I noted, there is some R25 property. It is developed very densely with apartments now. Those were built in 1970 and 2002, and again, that property does provide the only access to the subject site. Farther south is R15 land, also fairly densely developed with various forms of attached housing, and that land was subdivided for those in 1966. Divided from the site by slopes, a creek, and associated vegetation, we also have R5 land to the north with condominiums that were built in the 70s. And then we have R5 land to the west and R15 land to the southwest, all built with detached housing. And as you look at that air photo there, you can see those R5 properties and the R5 land are fairly well divided from the property by natural areas. To the east is City of Portland land that's also developed residentially. This is just a little bit closer look at the property, showing where access is provided from the south. The site is right on the county line with Multnomah County. And again, a look at the slopes and riparian areas to the northwest and west. This pans out a bit to give you a better idea of the site's location. It's near numerous employers, commercial, major arterials and collectors, a major pedestrian and bicycle facility that runs along US 26. And this is an area, or this is the type of area where county and state policies and metro policies encourage dense development. Here is a look at the access to this site. First, on the left, we're looking at Southwest 66th Avenue, where it's a public local street. Above that, top right, we see where it leads into the apartment development that's just south of the subject site. And at the top of that, north of the apartments, that image on the lower right shows a parking lot that does extend into the subject site. Key criteria for this plan amendment relate to citizen involvement, land use planning, housing, transportation, and other public facilities and services, and we have grouped those in the written staff report and also in this presentation. The sources for the criteria come from the statewide planning goals and the transportation planning rule, Metro's urban growth management functional plan, and Washington County's comprehensive framework plan for the urban area, transportation system plan, Cedar Hills Cedar Mill community plan, and the community development code. Looking first at citizen involvement, the county did provide notice to all required parties, including Metro, the Citizens Participation Organization 1, and property owners within 500 feet of the property. We also published notice in the Oregonian with information on how to testify. And the comment period that preceded this hearing, as well as this public hearing, provide opportunity for both written and oral public testimony. Looking at compliance for land use planning related criteria, the proposal meets state criteria regarding efficient use of land and encouragement of livable communities. It meets Metro functional plan provisions. The applicant's feasibility plan demonstrates potential to meet the maximum allowable density, which would be on this particular site 333 units. They're showing that in 2 4-story buildings. There are Metro riparian wildlife habitat areas shown on mapping. There's also a drainage hazard area that the county has identified, and associated with that would be Clean Water Services vegetated buffers. All of those things could impact the ability to meet the maximum density. The extent of those areas and their impacts to density will be reviewed as part of a future development application, though. I should say or emphasize that the plan provided is for feasibility only, so any attention to those off-site constraints or potentially on-site constraints and any related conditions would have to be assigned at the development review stage when there's a formal development application and formal site plan. This application also meets county directives to permit growth where adequate public facilities exist and to encourage infill and land conservation and to strengthen the economy. The proposal meets comprehensive framework plan requirements or policies by demonstrating a mistake in the land use designation back in 1983. This site was designated R5 like lands to the north that you saw in previous images and to the west. But the slopes, the creek, and the associated vegetation both divide this property from those R5 lands and make access through them infeasible for this site. The property also requires access through that dense R25 plus complex without the benefit of public streets, which are necessary to subdivisions typical of single detached R5 development. this application does not, or this site actually does not really meet the R5 criteria in Policy 18 of the Comprehensive Framework Plan. Those do specify 3 particular zones that were applied to property back in 1973. And this designation was meant for those 3 zones, none of which applies to the subject site. The property does meet our 25+ criteria. It's near collector and arterial streets, transit, employment, and commercial areas. And the natural areas on its borders also provide buffering from potential impacts of this density that's proposed, also consistent with Policy 18.
Ms. Kelly, do you have a lot more to go? We have a question from the commissioner, one of the commissioners, but I want to make sure that if you want to get through everything first, then we can come back. But if this is a good time to pause, we can certainly take Commissioner Podar's questions.
I'm happy to pause if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Podar?
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair. Thank you, Aaron. I have a question. It mentioned, this already feels a little overwhelming right now with all of the information, so I'm glad for the pause. However, it said that we have informed community within 500 feet of the site. The site that we're talking about is 500. Have we done the feasibility of, are we just meeting minimum criteria that around 500 feet? Or are we actually, is that what is a good number to inform the community beyond that? What about 1,000 feet? What about 1,500 feet? Did we study the feasibility of doing that? Because 25 units versus 250 units is going to impact that entire region greatly, since it's all one single road, one-way traffic all along Barnes Road. So could somebody talk about that as well?
A long time ago, the county decided to apply this 500-foot requirement. It exceeds the minimum state requirement for 100 feet in the urban area. So no, we did not consider going beyond 500 feet as part of this plan amendment. But there is also a newspaper notice that ensures wider circulation of this information.
As far as I know, majority of the people that live in that area, they're probably not reading newspapers. They're probably getting, the houses are, because it's all single family homes. And they're quite big over there. 500 feet would hardly cover anything. So I wonder if at some point later when we start deliberation that we talk about this, it would be great. I just wanted to clarify that, did we do an analysis of whether 500 feet is required? So thank you for clarifying that for now.
Thank you, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, I'll continue. So the proposal regarding the comprehensive framework plan, this proposal also accommodates a good deal more housing. That creates potential for more construction jobs, home sales and rentals, businesses developing to serve incoming residents and employ them, home businesses, and then local circulation of those new incomes that are generated by these things. The proposal also encourages land use conservation as compared to R5, R25 plus allows close locational relationships between living, working, shopping, and recreation, while achieving that through a dense urban form, convenient to transportation and transit amenities. It also meets Cedar Hills Cedar Mill Community Plan provisions intended to provide for medium and high density on large lots in this eastern part of the plan area near arterials and collectors. And now moving on to housing criteria. the proposal meets statewide planning goal 10 and the state's metropolitan housing rule. As compared to R5, the proposed R25 plus facilitates attached housing. It allows attached housing through a simpler type 2 process versus type 3 as R5 with a public hearing. And it better achieves our required average density of over 8 units per acre. And it increases the supply of housing, or has potential to increase the supply of housing and variety. And with that, we have the potential to diversify rents and prices so that housing is more affordable to more households. Yes? Commissioner Milliman?
Just to make sure I understand, did you say there is a path to do a development if it stays in R5, it just requires more steps and a public hearing?
It would be highly infeasible to develop it as R5. R5 is typically developed with subdivisions for detached housing. You do need to have public street frontage for each of those, or public street frontage to the site, and then you sometimes can have private streets for each lot, but you cannot, there's no way to get a public street to this site. Conversely, for apartment developments, you don't need those public streets going through the properties and to each unit.
Okay, so there isn't really a path forward if we don't,
It would be
to put apartments
highly-
there if they don't change it to R25.
It would be
Got it.
highly
Thank you.
impractical. I think there would have to be some way to get a street across the ravines and the sensitive areas.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Podar.
Thank you. I have another question when it comes to, we are saying that we are still using the statement that says more housing supply and variety means that we will have diversification in rents and prices. That, again, that's not a true statement, because even despite the fact that we have denser housing in Bethany, it's already happened, and we have variety, the housing prices have continued to skyrocket. So when we say that this is, when we continue to lead with that statement, how are we demanding that we also meet the affordable housing for people earning between, say, up to, say, $50,000, $60,000 to be able to live in Bethany, because that is not happening right now at all. People cannot afford to live in that area. And especially across from homes that now cost $1 million, or actually it's about more like $800,000 to $1.3 million in, along Barnes Road. So what, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, that how are we using these statements that without proper numbers about what kind of housing, what kind of price range, what kind of rents are we looking at, so that when it comes to decision making, it actually becomes, we don't continue to support expensive development versus affordable development for a normal person to be able to earn and live in these spaces. So could somebody elaborate on that as well? Because it does, as far as I know, the proposal meets. If we continue to work with a mindset and intention of we just keep meeting the old criteria, how are we going to someday meet what we need today and tomorrow? Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Podar. I'm just going to ask that we address clarifying questions only during the presentation, and then perhaps these are better left for deliberation, if that's all right.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you. Let's see. So this proposal also would facilitate density and attached housing consistent with the R25 plus property to the south. It would effectively be an extension of that development. And the natural areas surrounding the property would also help to benefit the R5 lands to the north and the west by buffering those from impacts. Moving on, this proposal enables greater housing supply and potential for units affordable to more households. This is an alternative to single detached housing, which does tend to be the most expensive and the most predominant housing type in the county right now. It optimizes the use of existing urban services, something that is also a priority of the county, state, and metro. And Oregon Department of Transportation and Portland Bureau of Transportation have both indicated that they don't expect significant impacts to the road system. I reference these agencies because the site is on the county line, and the primary roads that this site will ultimately access would be Skyline, which is in the city of Portland, and US Highway 26. This does contribute to a housing mix. We do want to build the housing mix and create more variety for more people's needs. It also facilitates common wall housing, reducing outside walls and conserving energy. Also being near industry and employment and other amenities, it helps to reduce trips. Also, this will satisfy the Cedar Hills Cedar Mill Community Plan provision that states good locations for increased density include large lots, relatively free from steep slopes and drainage hazards, and near collectors. So this site, while it does have steep slopes along its borders, it does have relatively mild slopes in the central area and to the south.
Ms. Kelly, I'd like to ask a clarifying question.
Sure.
Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that there may be some challenges to meet the maximum density, and I was just curious about how much do you think those challenges might reduce the number of actual usage?
I can't really quantify that. There was a previous development approved that included a church and a school. That's a relatively large development, so clearly there was enough land there that was determined to be buildable at that time. I think that gives a good indication that there could be a fair amount of land for housing units as well. And some of this will depend on the size of the units the applicant ultimately proposes in terms of how many units they'll get as well. The applicant may be able to give you a better idea at the end. Regarding land use districts, again, as far as housing is concerned, I'll just recap the slopes and the creek isolate this property from R5 lands. Therefore, R5 is a very difficult designation for this property. It's infeasible to meet street standards for subdivisions that are typical of R5, excuse me. This property relies on access through the apartment development to the south. It would be next to impossible to get access through there for a single detached development as R5. It facilitates similar development to what's already there through a simpler process, type 2 versus type 3 for attached in R5. And it greatly adds potential to address housing need. Regarding transportation, our transportation staff has concluded that this will not significantly affect capacity or levels of travel on the transportation network, and this is based on analysis of the applicant's detailed traffic report, as well as comments I previously noted from ODOT and PBOT. I will note that those agencies will again have the opportunity to comment at the development review stage when a more specific proposal for development is provided. Regarding land use conservation policies, this maintains compliance with the transportation system plan, and it increases density near employment, transit, and transportation, as we've discussed. Again, near all of the things we're looking for with density, employment, major roads, and so forth. And this project, when it goes through development review, will be subject to the transportation development tax to ensure capacity improvements. The Cedar Hills Cedar Mill Community Plan compliance is evident in its proximity, the site's proximity to a multimodal trail along Highway 26. This is a major trail that provides for a lot of commuting from downtown Portland into Washington County and back and forth. On-site pedestrian and bicycle amenities will be integrated if they're required as part of the development review. And the site has already annexed into the Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District. There are some parking requirements within the Cedar Mill Community Plan, but there's recently been adopted legislation that precludes us from requiring parking as part of certain developments. This one does appear to be eligible for that exemption. It is within a 3/4 mile of a rail or transit stop and 1/2 mile of a frequent transit corridor based on the maps that we were able to assess. So that will again be confirmed at the development review stage 2. And then regarding other facilities and services, the Park District has indicated that this area is below their level of service, but we'd like to note that this is right on the Multnomah County line, very close to Washington Park and several other recreational amenities, as well as that major pedestrian and bike trail. All other service providers have indicated that they can adequately serve the property. And getting to testimony, we've received 2 letters. The first is from a Multnomah County neighbor, and she's concerned about wildlife, forested areas, and the wetlands in Sylvan Creek, and looking for environmental protections for those, which again will be applied as applicable at the development review stage when there's a more definite site plan. She's also concerned about traffic and associated infrastructure needs, and we did discuss input from ODOT and PBOT and our transportation planning staff. Again, all of those agencies can comment again at the development review stage. And we also have comments from a group of landowners nearby, also concerned about environmental issues, including erosion and degradation of slopes. They suggest that's already happening. They're worried about the health of the forest and the watershed, and would like us to consider applying conditions of approval to avoid further impacts to those. And again, the best place for that is where they're typically applied at the development review stage with a more specific development proposal. So in conclusion, and to provide a staff recommendation, based on the criteria and the findings in the submitted application, the staff report and its attachments, staff believes R25 plus is a more appropriate designation for this property than the existing R5 designation. And we therefore recommend that the Planning Commission hold the required public hearing and at the conclusion of the hearing, approve this proposed plan amendment. Thank you.
Ms. Kelly, thank you. I'd like to open this up to the other commissioners. We just want to remind you, this is a period for clarifying questions only. This is not a period of deliberation. So do you have any additional clarifying questions for Ms. Kelly? All right, seeing not, then Mr. Counsel, would this be an opportunity for us to open up deliberations? Okay, so we will now open up public hearing, sorry. We now open up the public hearing. I'd like to ask if the applicant has a representative online or here in the chamber that would like to testify. Is there anyone online to testify? Yes. Okay, so we would like for them to be sworn in, and as indicated by counsel, the applicant and the representative will have up to 10 minutes.
Hello?
Excellent. So we have an applicant's representative here with us virtually.
Yes.
Great. If you would raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. If you would state your full name and address for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Sure. My name is Ken Sandblast, Sandblast. My mailing address is 15115 Southwest Sequoia Parkway, Suite 150, Tigard, Oregon 97224. I'm the Director of Land Use Planning at Westlake and working with the property owner, Tandem Properties. In our room here, we didn't realize it was a hybrid, so we're here together as a hybrid meeting. And we have 5 members of Tandem here with me, as well as our traffic engineer, in case there's any questions that might come up. We're not going to take our full 10 minutes. I think the staff has done an absolutely thorough job of addressing the criteria. I do want to talk about just emphasize a couple of things about the application and the property, and then talk about maybe 1 or 2 of the questions that have been raised by the commission there during the staff presentation. So the property itself, as you can see from some of the slides that were presented, the property is in an area that is a mix of different zones, and adjacent to the south is the access for this. So we are proposing a zone that is consistent and compatible with the mix of zonings that's there. The real issue here, as is noted by some of the public comments, is just what can be built there, or what's the impact of what's going to be built there. The staff has done a good job of responding and providing the context that tells us that there's a future design review application that would come after this zone change. And a lot of the details, including some of those that are raised by the public comments, would be addressed at that time. As a zone change application, this is a policy level decision. Is it a good idea? Does it meet the criteria for the policy to put additional housing in this location? And we believe in our application materials, as well as in the findings of the staff report, that indeed it does meet all the applicable criteria to do that. We provided a very conceptual concept plan, and you saw that as one of the slides. And that's really what I want to emphasize at this time. On that slide, or on that concept plan, the property, there's questions about the stability, well, not stability of the slope, but just the degree of the slope. And there's been some initial geotech work done, of course, to determine and confirm that the property is stable and fine. There's also been some initial investigation done about the natural resources, because again, as the public comments point out, and as per our concept plan and the staff report, there's adjacent resources, but none of the drainage way, the physical drainage, is located on the property itself. There are slopes that'll be associated for protection, and we indicated that on our concept plan as kind of a way to show where the development in the future would occur under this proposed R25 zoning. The aerial photo that you saw also shows you that there's an existing parking lot and that there's a cleared area on the property north of that. And in summary, that is where the development of the property will go. Again, that's what you see on the concept plan that we've provided. So the terms of density, a question was asked by a commissioner about what the future density may look like. We also showed 2 building envelopes and noted on there on the concept plan that there would be somewhere between 100, and I'm looking at that same exhibit, somewhere around 130 to 140, 50 units on one building, and 170 to 190 units on the other building. Those are conceptual, and I think the staff did a good job of saying, you know, it really does depend. We haven't refined this yet. We're not at that stage. What we're trying to demonstrate is just can it fit? Is it feasible? So that's what those orange boxes on that concept plan represent. The other part you will note, if you look closely, is that there's understory parking. So there'd be structured parking underneath these buildings. And so I think there was a question raised about would there be parking? The staff noted that it may not be required. Yes, there will still be parking required, or not required, but provided. And so that has been conceptualized into the site to reflect the reality that people that live in multifamily have cars as well. So the conceptual idea of this site is to only develop in the areas that are pretty much already cleared or developed with the parking lot, provide the setbacks that are required by the development codes that we're looking ahead at just to think about, and then also to provide adequate parking and open space on the property. It's not normal that I'd spend a bunch of time talking about the site plan, but the zoning in this case, it's just the R25 zoning clearly meets the applicable criteria and clearly is a good zone for this property, given the site conditions and the access restrictions and the surrounding natural resources. So I don't have anything else to say at this time in terms of a presentation. If you have any questions for me or for us that are all sitting here, please feel free to ask them.
We do have questions. Commissioner Will?
Hello, Mr. Sandblast. There was some questions about the ability to bring a public street to the site. Have you and the applicant looked at that, and were the comments from staff correct that the only way to bring a public street to the site is by crossing the drainage, which I think the public and based on public comment are concerned about doing?
I appreciate that question and the clarification. To the south, and the staff is correct to answer your question, the staff is correct. There is no public road access. It's, as you saw from the aerials and you also saw in the staff presentation, it's already developed with a multifamily complex. There's housing there. And that housing does not have any public street access. To the west, adjacent to the west and adjacent to the north, again, as you saw in the aerial and the staff laid out, we lay out in our application and the staff laid out, that's natural resource open space tracts that were platted by adjacent existing development. So I don't know off the top of my head. I think one of them is owned by an HOA. The other one might be public, but the bottom line is those are not opportunities for public right-of-ways to come from either the north or the west. To the east is the county line, again, as you saw in the staff presentation and in the materials. That's another city, that's private property. There's no public right-of-way that comes, and that's got slope and natural resource issues associated in the city of Portland. So the short answer is no, there is really no viable, feasible, reasonable public right-of-way to come here, which is, again, as laid out in the materials, another reason why this multifamily is here, because multifamily, as staff correctly noted, can be served by an access easement.
One quick follow-up question, if you, Vice Chair Dye. If in the future a development application is submitted, will there be a traffic study to understand the capacity of the parking lot to have additional through traffic and then, of course, outflow traffic onto the adjacent public streets?
Another good question. The answer to that is yes, there will be another traffic study done, as will a lot of geotechnical studies will be required. There'll be a complete site analysis, including an additional traffic study. And that study will be based upon the actual number of specific dwelling units that ultimately gets proposed. And that will look at access and the surrounding levels of service to make sure that it's safe for that level of dwelling units. And also, as you note, to get out through the adjacent existing development.
Okay, thanks for those clarifications.
Mr. Sandblast, this is Blake Dye. I was curious, you used the numbers of approximately 130 to 150 units in one building, 170, 190 units in another building. You mentioned that there would be parking under. Can you illustrate the types of housing that you're looking at placing in those units? Are these townhome apartments? Are they multifamily apartments? I'm just trying to get a sense of what 130 to 150 looks like.
Sure. So and I appreciate the question. The answer is that they'll look, I guess a quick way to capture that is they'll look at similar to what's adjacent to the south. So it'll be multifamily residential units. It's noted on that same concept exhibit, 4 stories. The other one's noted as 4 stories. So you're looking at multi-story buildings that are what we would all, I think, know as traditionally multifamily apartments. So it'll be that kind of characterized as that kind of development, if that answers your question.
Thank you. Commissioner Podar.
Thank you. I have a question just to follow up with that, with the parking. If you're saying that there are going to be 150 units, and if there are, since that area has no public transportation, it's not well connected with public transportation. We're expecting multifamily 2 cars per unit. So we are going to be, there would be provision for 300 cars below each building to ensure that everybody has access to parking.
Thank you. And I would say that, yes, there will be adequate parking. It's become a new world when they don't require parking any longer, potentially, but parking will be provided. And yes, these buildings will facilitate at least 1 to 1.5 parking spaces per unit. We don't know exactly how many units are there yet because we haven't got that far, but yes, there will be adequate parking. What we're doing right now in site planning for these things is we're using the existing county codes for minimum parking requirements, right? We're not, just because they're not required doesn't mean that we're not providing parking. So again, I'm not sure this answers your question, but we will be using the current code of the county to guide the parking that would be provided for this future development.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner Porter, before you continue, Ms. Kelly, you mentioned in your presentation about the access to public transit, and I just want to know if you could revisit that so that we had a full illustration of the public transit availability for this area.
The property is designated on our maps as being close to a frequent transit route, which would be Skyline Boulevard. It's also not too far from the Sunset Transit Center, which, by the way, is accessible by the bicycle facility as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. I would love to know more about the public transportation accessibility. How far, like how close, and are people able to bike there? Are we talking about really accessibility regarding everybody being able to bike on slopes and in different weather conditions? How is the Sunset Transit Center, is it truly accessible to that many people? But again, when we're talking about multifamily and we say that each unit will have 1.5 parking spots, also just for everybody's information, in Bethany at the intersection of I believe it's Laidlaw and Bethany Boulevard, there is lots and lots of townhomes. And those townhomes, when people cannot actually visit those townhomes because there's hardly any parking, so those families are really cut off from the rest of the world, because if any family member, if 2 people have cars, they don't have parking ability. They have to walk about 10 to 15 minutes sometimes to be able to find parking for living in those units, because that's how fewer parking there are, and it is not accessible. We don't have enough public transportation. And also, if there are any visiting family members, if there is an event or anything, there is no parking availability. So when we say multifamily, at one place we're saying multifamily, and the other hand we say just one car park, then that completely changes the dynamic. So I'm just, it is my, as usual, my worry that we are talking in a duality that does not seem to relate to one another when we say multifamily, but we will not ensure enough parking, and that's one aspect of it. But I'm going back to the other aspect of it, that I doubt we have done enough outreach to ensure that when there are, even if we add 100 units to say 300 units, how that's going to change the environment of that place. I don't think enough people understand what that means. A lot of people that live in that area, because they have never communicated and connected with government systems and structures, they do not understand the impact of what is about to happen. So are we doing enough adequate outreach? I would like that question answered. Have we done adequate outreach to community members to make them aware of the impact of what this is? And the other question was about the parking, that how are we ensuring that when we say multifamily, that we are actually ensuring that multiple people living in that space have access to parking?
We are,
Am I back online? I'm sorry, I muted myself, I think. Thank you for that question, and it reminded me that you raised that during the staff presentation about notice. I don't have anything to add to the notice about the 500 feet. I think the staff conveyed very clearly that that's greater than what's required by state law. I do want to add that the CPO, which is the formal citizen involvement organization in this area, was notified of this application as well. So was there adequate notice? The answer to that question from my perspective is yes, there was, because it met all the requirements that are currently in place. So as to the parking, I would say that you raised some, I would characterize, I've been in this business for 30 years as a land use planner, including sat on a planning commission. You're raising some policy level questions, which I think are probably very apropos for a planning commission to debate when it comes to work sessions about policy. We're not necessarily in that mode right here. I've got my hat on as an applicant for an application that has specific criteria applied to it. So at this point, I have to look at those criteria, and in this case, the policies, and say, on balance, with the applicable ones that we have found, is this the right zoning? And the answer is yes. The parking thing, as I kind of noted a little bit ago, bothers me a little bit as a land use planner. The state is the one that's driving this with the climate equity. Now, we can agree or disagree. That's what policies are all about. But that is coming, that's what we're operating in. So as I've said, we're going to provide the parking on this site that is more than adequate for the site, or else it won't be a successful housing development for the residents of the county, right? So we will be providing access. You also raised the question about, or parking, excuse me. You also raised the question about access. There's maximum grades of roads, including parking lots and drive aisles, that are more than adequate. They have to be maximum slopes and cross slopes for access for vehicles, for emergency vehicles, for solid waste, and for pedestrians and bikes and multimodal, including ADA ramps. So all of that level of detail is in your codes and will be applied to this application at the time that we get to the development review application. So hopefully, I think I fielded what I heard, but I think I've got your three areas there. Hopefully that gives you a response.
Thank you, Mr. Sandblast. Are there any other questions related to any from any other commissioners? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Sandblast, and we will now move forward. And I'd like to ask for a testimony from the members of the public. And Clerk Aguiar, would you please call on people to testify in order indicated by council? We will start with those in support of the proposal who signed up in advance.
Chair Dye, the individuals who have signed up to testify have not specified their positions. I will call for individuals in favor of this proposal and ask for those people to raise their hands. Aaron Moulton. Please state your name and address for the record. Then council will begin with your oath.
Is Aaron Moulton on?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you very much. If you would raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. If you would please state your full name and address and then proceed to testify. Thank you.
My name is Erin Moulton, and I live at 6500 Southwest Barnes Road. And I live in the Sunlight condo community that is just to the, I believe we're to the north of the property that we're talking about. We submitted a letter that was mentioned earlier in the proposal, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things about from our letter. I'm representing not only the Sunlight condo community, but there's also other community members. So there's 15 households in our condo community, and then there are 3 other households that also have property adjoining the property in question that have also signed on to our letter. So that's in total representing around 30 people altogether, 35 people. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. And one is that we've been working, both the Sunlight condo community and some of the private residents along the riparian area with West Multnomah Soil and Water District for over the last 10 years, as well as Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District to protect the riparian area. And partly we were contacted by them in noticing some of the erosion, significant erosion and ecological degradation around the Sylvan Creek area. So we've been working to remove invasives and to plant native plants to protect that area. The part in Washington County that's through Tualatin Soil and Water, they have actually identified that as a key environmental area. So this is to the, I believe, north and northwest of the property in question. And one of the things we've noticed over the last 10 years is as that erosion has been happening, a lot of the trees that they're talking about bordering and protecting some of those R5 areas from the development actually have been sliding down the hill and crashing over the creek. So I've hiked all through there. I've hiked through the area that was cleared that they mentioned, maybe about 4 years ago, it was cleared and it's now all blackberries. But a lot of the trees that used to be in that area have all come down and slid down the bank. So I just wanted to mention that. All of the neighbors that have signed on to our letter all in support and want to see affordable housing in our community, so that we're not in against that, but we would really love to see that it's affordable housing as well. We just really want it to be considered the runoff from all the parking and the parking lots and how that might impact the area. And then the one other thing I wanted to add, and this is more from my own perspective, I'm not speaking on behalf actually of those who also signed the letter, is kind of connecting what Commissioner Potter was mentioning. Curious about if people in Multnomah County or the school that's at the corner of 58th and Canyon Court was notified of this possible change. Currently, the only way out from that, from the Sylvan Highlands development is to come out along Southwest Canyon Court and onto 58th Avenue. And there's a school there. And when you come through that zone, it's very, very congested in the morning time. And so just considering that impact that will make, and then the crossing for the children who are walking to school or coming into that area, there's not a stoplight right there in front of the school. So just wanting to make sure that that part of the community is notified about this change. And that's all I have left to say.
Next, we have Nancy McKimmons, who has signed up.
Is Nancy McKimmons available?
Is Nancy, if you're available, can you please raise your virtual hand? Is there anyone else in the virtual audience who would like to testify in front of the Planning Commission on this plan amendment? If so, please indicate by raising your virtual hand. Jeff Brown, can you please state your name and address for the record? Then
Yes.
council will begin with your oath.
Certainly. My name is Jeffrey Brown. I live at 1321 Southwest 61st Drive, Portland 97221. I live in an area just to the east.
If you could just hold for a second, I need to
Oh,
swear.
sorry.
I need to
Swear
swear.
me
If
in.
you could raise your right hand.
Go ahead, swear me. Yeah.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great. If you could proceed to testify. Thank you.
Okay, I'm in the neutral category on this, neither for nor against. I have all the same liberal leanings about public, housing, low-income housing, riparian areas, and things like that. And so I'm neutral on this. I think that the developer has shown at least good intentions in their application. I'd like to maintain those intentions if I can. I live. This property is a large owned in two counties. One is Multnomah County, one is the Washington County, and I live in the unincorporated Multnomah County area. And I'm not sure I have standing to testify before you. I was in the 500-foot radius of notification, so I assume that I am. In order to identify my house, I'm going to refer you to either the satellite view on page 39 of the application, but it was better shown in the first slide that Ann Kelly showed. And then there's a plat one on page 65 of the application. If you can turn to that, if you have it on the computer, you'll see my house, which is just to the east of the Multnomah County portion of the property. So it's kind of an unusually elliptical shape. And one thing about Commissioner Padara asked questions about access, and I don't want to be disingenuous, but it is about a mile walk to the closest public transportation, which is a bus stop at the top of the Sylvan Hill at the bridge. My only question was related to the statement of an emergency access to the property. This is a really isolated piece of land. The only access, as has been pointed out, is through the apartment complex. I'm concerned that people will be trapped in their homes awaiting a fire engine, and there's allusion to an emergency access road connecting to Southwest 61st. It's not clearly specified at what point, either to the south or the north of my house, that would be. All I want is a little bit more specification as to that. The Northwest Tibetan Cultural Association application was for a 50,000-foot church and educational center. This was met with some resistance from the neighborhood. Eventually, a good neighbor agreement was reached in which the size of that was decreased. And I think that was mostly due to the impact of traffic, occasional traffic for church services, which would be very heavy. So I have no objection to the development. Myself, I want some clarification of the emergency access to this. Density and those kind of issues are always a problem, but of course, to make this economically feasible for the developer, there has to be some density, and I understand that. So that's about all the comment I have, mostly with regards to the impact on my house. It would be where this emergency access would be on 61st. So it's just a question more than a objection. Everybody kind of get that? I may have rambled. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the virtual audience who would like to testify to this plan amendment? Chair Dye, it looks like that's all the people who we have in support of and who are neutral to the plan amendment.
All right, thank you so much. Would you please call on people to testify in opposition of the proposal who signed up in advance?
Is there anyone online, if you could raise your virtual hand, that is in opposition to this application, if you'd like to testify? And if not seeing any, would return to the applicant if they have any additional information they would wish to offer.
Thank you. This is Ken Sandblast again for the applicant. I just wanted to, I appreciate the testimony that we received, and it prompted me a couple of responses. One was from Aaron Moulton about the runoff and the natural resource area. It sounds like they have an ongoing interest there to make that increase its value, which is great. It made me remember that the future development of this site is, in addition to setbacks from those natural areas, which are all required and regulated for surface water quality, we're also required to do complete collection, detention, and treatment of any new impervious surface that gets created. And that all has to be dealt with on site before anything is discharged or outfalls down to the open space tracts. So the response is just simply that, yes, those are other requirements that will be involved in the future development. And those are extremely detailed regulations and requirements to clean water services. So that prompted me on that one. The other one was Mr. Brown and the emergency vehicle access. Two things come to mind. One is we have an SPL, service provider letter, in the file from TVFNR. They have reviewed this zone change and found that that it's adequate to get to this property. And then the other one that his input prompted me on was the concept plan. And I'm not sure if I was unclear, but I'll just clarify for the record that the concept sheet, again, unfortunately, I don't have the page reference number, but it's the colored concept plan, again, the one I spoke about in my original testimony. There is no emergency access shown on that plan going east. So I'm just clarifying that I'm not sure if this answers directly what he was talking about, but there is no emergency access shown on that concept. So this concept envisions and anticipates that the access for all vehicles to the property come from the south, including for emergency vehicle access. So other than that, I would just request your support of this application to rezone this to R25 plus. Again, for all the details in our application and that analysis provided by the staff, we believe that we've met the applicable criteria, and we'd look for your support. So thank you very much. And if you have any final questions, please feel free. And other than that, we're complete for today.
Thank you so much. Clerk Aguilar, do you have, would we consider the oral public testimony complete? Do we have any own?
No.
Okay. All right. Do we have any additional written testimony that's been received?
Yes, we did get additional, which we did forward to the Planning Commission from Julie Gotcher and Eric Moulton.
Okay. And seeing this, we will now close the hearing and move on to public deliberations. And before we do that, I would like to grant a 5-minute recess so that our fellow planning commissioners can do what they need to. We have 3 o'clock here, and I'd like everyone back at 3:05. Commissioners, I just wanted to give you an update that we are working through some technical issues on this side, and so we are going to just delay for a couple more minutes to see if we can get these resolved.
me know when you have her online. Yeah, just let me know when she joins and I'll okay. Chair Dye, I think we are now prepared to proceed. If you'd let me kind of explain what's happened here. We've got one more witness to take testimony from.
All right, thank you so much. I want to again apologize for the extended break, but we did need to get some things resolved because I'd like to make sure that all public testimony is heard, and we have an individual that was unable to connect previously, and I'd like to reopen the public testimony so that we can allow for them to participate.
Thank you, Chair Dye. The additional witness who we were having trouble connecting with is Nancy McKimmons. It's my understanding she is now online and prepared to testify. Is that right, Nancy McKimmons? Are you online?
Yes.
Excellent. We are here in the matter you're calling in for, so if I could just get you to raise your right hand. I know you're calling in virtually, but if you could raise your right hand, and then I will ask you, do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
If you could state your full name and your address and then proceed to testify, you have up to 5 minutes.
Well, I won't need that. My name is Nancy Ellen McKimmons, 6508 Southwest Barnes Road, Portland.
And please proceed.
Okay, well, I share the concerns that Sunlight Community and other neighbors commented on about protecting the watershed, because I've been part of the committee for, gosh, almost 10 years that has worked on preserving the creek. But my comments, I support those concerns, but I have additional ones that stem from the fact that there isn't what I consider foresight and a greater view on safety of the residents of Canyon Court and those of us who surround this small watershed that is being, well, rightfully so, developed as appropriate. But my biggest concern is that there's only one way in and one way out. And I know that when it was on Multnomah County side, I only recently discovered there was a lot of work, hard work put in by the Sylvan Highlands Neighborhood Association that was not considered. In fact, and it is the same issue that they raised, except that now we're looking at even more density, so that in the event of some catastrophe that warrants people leaving in a hurry, or a fire and emergency vehicles getting in there, I think there needs to be another way for residents to access Canyon Road, or some other way for them to get out of this dead end, because the density is huge. I've driven back in there, tried to walk in numerous times over the years, and more recently after I got the letter. So in the event of an active shooter, or hard to believe today, but in the summertime, it is exceedingly dry. It would take one small accident and with the increased density to spark a fire that would just not, would almost be uncontrollable in terms of going up the slopes. and affecting all the people around, not just, of course, where there are more condos proposed. So I'm hoping, you know, I know we're overdue for an earthquake. It's easy to ignore it because there's no specific timeline. But I do think that as a planning commission and thinking about zoning changes, that type of big picture needs to be considered. And I'm hoping very much that you will slow things down to address that. The other issues I have are smaller in terms of protecting against sound or what the lighting is, whether we're going to end up with lights coming in our windows all around the area, not just me, but how that is being addressed. And I'm so sorry I didn't get to hear everything because I very much have been planning on participating. So I appreciate your listening to me. I'm a little less organized than if I had my papers in front of me, but thank you.
Thank you. Chair Dye, unless there are questions from the Planning Commission, because we did take an additional witness to testimony, we need to reopen the rebuttal period for the applicant, if the applicant has any comments on what was just testified about.
All right, thank you so much. And Mr. Sandblast or other representatives, are you available or would you be interested in a rebuttal?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I have anything to rebut. I just would reemphasize mainly because Nancy's testimony was focused on the safety of the access in and out. We spoke about that during the hearing, and it sounds like maybe Nancy didn't hear it. First of all, TVF&R has reviewed this zone change and found that they have adequate service for the rezoning of the property. And then, as I stated in my previous remarks or previous testimony, the actual development of the site is going to be subject to a very detailed review, again, by the emergency service providers, amongst many others. And at that time, things, as Nancy just noted, things like noise and lighting, landscaping, those are all guided by code or regulated by code, and will be reviewed and included as part of the future development application, which will go through, and I didn't say this earlier, but will go through its own separate public notice process, another formal land use decision-making process. So it'll have another complete opportunity for everyone to be informed about the absolute details of what's involved with the future development of the property. So short of that, I don't have anything to rebut about what Nancy said. I just wanted to add the additional information and clarification.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sandblast. And so, Council, is this a good time to now move on to close the hearing and to move on to deliberations?
I believe so, unless we'll just maybe just check one more time with Clerk Aguilar. Is there anybody else that wants to testify that we're possibly aware of?
I don't believe so.
All right.
All right, so I will conclude applicant testimony and can move on to Planning Commissioner deliberations.
If it's okay,
I bang the gavel
Chair
already.
Dye, I'll just give a brief introduction to the deliberations in a QJ hearing, since we haven't done this for a little while. If that's all right.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
So just as a brief reminder to everyone here on the Planning Commission, I would say most recently, well, almost with few exceptions actually recently, you've been sitting as essentially a legislative body. You've been policy making, deciding what ordinances to recommend be enacted, what changes to ordinances should be recommended to the Board of Commissioners. Wearing your hat is functionally the equivalent of legislators. That is not the type of hearing we're having here today. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, which means you're not sitting as policymakers. You're sitting more like judges, deciding whether or not the applicant meets the existing policy. In other words, whether it meets the existing standards and criteria. This is not about establishing standards and criteria. This is an actual application under the existing standards and criteria. So I would recommend that you engage in deliberations that focus in on whether or not this particular applicant has submitted adequate information to satisfy you that they have met the standards and conditions in existing law. So that's just my general summation of the difference between a legislative hearing and a quasi-judicial hearing. So I'm happy to take any questions if you'd like, but I think you can proceed with your discussions and deliberations at this time.
Thank you so much, Council. Do we have any commissioners who have any input or would like to comment on what they've heard today? Commissioner Will.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dye, fellow commissioners and applicant and the public and staff. I appreciate all the hard work everybody put into this hearing and the testimonies. I noticed the public comment was focused on a lot of elements that are going to be reviewed in the future at time of an application for specific improvements of this site. So I really did not hear any testimony that substantially opposed the rezone or pointed out any approval criteria that weren't addressed. And so I tend to want to support this application with a positive vote and follow the recommendation of staff to do so. Thank you.
Are there other commissioners who are interested in contributing to this conversation? Commissioner Podar.
Thank you. I just wanted to recheck beyond and add anything more beyond what has already been said, or reiterate those criteria that is 500 feet sufficient and has enough public input been taken in order to be able to say that the people are meeting. At what point are things going to change where we can actually ask for adequate public input in order to meet minimum criteria? And are minimum criteria sufficient for us at this moment, especially with this development in a highly dense area with very limited accessibility, even for cars to get in and out in situations of emergency or anything? Thanks.
Commissioner Porter, I think it would be helpful if you could define what you mean by you're asking for adequate, and the staff may not understand what your expectation is.
Adequate means that has enough effort been put into outreach to community members beyond the minimum standard requirement to ensure that that entire area will be impacted, not just 500 feet. So have we truly done enough to reach out to the community members? And do they understand the implications of this development? Has there been efforts put towards that?
And I'm sorry to press you for more detail, but you're going to have to say what would be your standard for what they can meet, because as you're asking the question, I'm not getting clarity on what the expectation is that would satisfy the answer, and I don't want to put the staff in a position where they're not comfortable answering a question because it's not clear to them.
No problem. You can keep asking, and I will also clarify it because somebody else also may have similar concern, but they may not be able to word it correctly. So I'm okay with, I'm assuming that 500 feet from that property would be, say, 10 homes, 10 houses. On one side, has effort been taken to make other community members, say up to about, say, 20 houses or 50 houses, aware and conscious of the traffic implications, the land implications, the wildlife implications? Do they truly understand the implications of this development so that they can actually testify and engage before we say that, yes, the developer has met all of the criterias. Does that help, Vice Chair Dye?
Yes, and one of the planners is going to answer.
Yes, thank you. As Mr. Bovet noted, we are bound by the requirements that we have in our code at this time. And our code does require that we provide a 500-foot notice. Ms. Kelly noted that that is beyond what the state law requires, which is just 100 feet. So if there was interest in making changes to what our notice requirement is, that would need to be done in a separate action, I think, through a revision to our code. But we are bound by what our code requires at this time, and that is the 500 feet. Oh, and we did also do a newspaper notice, so that is a broader notice that goes beyond. And we did also let the CPO know, the Community Participation Organization, and they do often consider plan amendments and other development actions at their meetings. So that would have been another spot for the community to learn about it.
Commissioner Porter, did that satisfy your answer?
Yes, kind of. It is what it is, I guess, for now.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Millman.
Thanks, Vice Chair Dye. I apologize if this question makes me a terrible commissioner. Is this information available on the county website? Is it pretty searchable? And is there training available? Is there a way to make that a better or more usable venue? Because, I haven't searched, but it seems like if you can search in a radius of your home, that might be a way to do it as well, since more folks are interneting than newspapering.
So we do have the Planning Commission agenda and the packet of information for the meeting available online. I don't believe that the plan amendments go into our ACELA application. So when there's a development application, that is searchable. I don't believe that, okay, and thinks that they do get onto our ACELA application website. So if someone is interested in what is going on development-wise in their area, they can go through our portal and look for that. I don't know how easy that is to do, but that is available.
Could we, in a future meeting, do an exercise where the Planning Commission members in this group go through that and maybe demonstrate that for the public? And did I hear you say that rezoning is available on that functionality?
Yes, current planning does enter plan amendment case files into the roster of case files, just like any other case file.
Okay, so that's on the internet that somebody could search it if they knew how.
Yes.
And is there a training video available?
I am not sure about that.
Okay, it sounds like it's great, and it sounds like it might be underutilized. So I'm trying to figure out how we make that more accessible. Thanks.
All right, are there other commissioners that have commentary they need to make? Any further deliberation? Commissioner Will.
I would like to also point out this hearing is a great way for the public to learn about it, and people can look at our agenda and check to see if anything's coming up on projects in their area. So that's further addressing Commissioner Podar's concern about making sure the wider community is aware of developments that may not necessarily be next door to them, but might be farther away than 500 feet. But I would like to make a motion. If I could get some assistance from staff on how to word my motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposal.
I'm going to check with council, but
think that's
there is a
adequate.
motion. There is a motion to approve the application, and it would require a second. Is there a second?
A second.
Commissioner Fry has seconded, so we can entertain this motion to approve. And are there any questions related to this? Seeing not, are we able to take a vote?
Roll call vote?
Commissioner Fry,
Vote to approve.
Commissioner Havner,
Approve.
Commissioner Milliman,
Approve.
Commissioner Podar,
No.
Commissioner Will,
I vote to approve, yes.
Chair Dye.
I vote to approve.
That's 5-1. The motion does pass.
The motion has passed to approve, and we can now conclude this quasi-judicial hearing. Is that correct, counsel?
That's correct.
We are done. Okay, moving forward. All right, so moving forward, let's now go to any announcements from the Planning Commission. Any commissioners have any announcements that they would like to make? Commissioner Will.
I would like to announce that this is my first Planning Commission meeting where Vice Chair Dye was able to lead the meeting, and I want to congratulate him on a good meeting and thank him for his support and service. It was fun.
Thank you so much for that support. Are there any other announcements? All right, seeing none, would be a great time to see if anyone is open to adjourning. I'm getting a lot of approval. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and thank you, staff, for your support. This meeting is now adjourned.